Come and take a class at the Alteration.
Welcome everybody to a very special bonus episode of Alter Academy, where we are going to showcase a potentially meta-defining deck that is first being ran at the big event in Germany this weekend. And we have JDRR as our first return guest on Alter Academy to showcase and introduce this deck to the world. JDRR, welcome back, and can you get right into telling us about this creation and how you expect it to affect the meta?
Sure. Well, first of all, thanks for having me back again. Pleasure to be here. So initially, I was working on a deck very similar to this prior at the beginning of set 7. This was prior to the Hiram ban. So the list looked very similar with like different tech cards. But then after the Hiram ban, that kind of changed everything, and everyone was kind of like all up in swords because no one knew really what to do anymore. It was like a brand new meta, so people were like trying rabbits again. But then what really happened was, I think it was Battle Bear, that tournament, and DKP, the one that DKP won with his red-blue list, because basically losing Hiram meant nothing to his deck. And also purple evasives came into popularity. Also green-purple discard, or green purple in general, came into popularity as well, all around the same time as like the first new meta decks. So then I was like, well, you can't play a rabbit deck into all these evasives because you're just gonna die.
Right.
The other thing was that you couldn't play Genie, right? Because Genie just gets whacked by Iago because everyone's playing Iago, the 4/6.
Yep.
The evasive bird, right?
Oh, yeah.
So like you play Genie and then they just kill you. So then I was like, well, that feels really bad. So I was like, okay, so Blurple has a chance to actually potentially, well, Blurple has historically been good into red decks in general, just because you can outgrind them, you can play that game, you can ramp, right? You can keep up. And the other thing is that you're also historically good into purple. So that's why I was like, well, if I just play my own Iago on turn 3, that's faster than all the other purple decks can play Iago, and that means they can't do anything. Because I play Iago first, then I go into Elsa, and then I just tap whatever they play and start swinging with my Iago, and then they can never catch up, right?
Right.
So that's the initial thought. I was like, I think purple can just do this evasive game better than everyone else can. And yeah, then that was very good. Then I was like, well, without Hiram, the other thing was like, we had no answers to Hiram and Blurple before, right?
Right.
Like the only way you could do it was like play a goat on turn 3 and then you Elsa on turn 4 and hit it. Right, but which is really kind of like sketchy. But now without Hiram, it's like, well, there's nothing we need to worry that much about anymore. And without much Sapphire coil in the meta, like there's not a lot of Sisu blowing up our entire board anymore. So then I was like, all right, then we're able to play this game, and they have to play B preps because Blurple can put a lot of pressure on very easily, force B preps and drop manners right after the B prep, and is pretty hard for them to deal with, especially if you drop multiple. And the other thing is that if all these lists are relying on Shark, so like red, purple, Ruby, Amethyst, Ruby, Sapphire, they're playing like 4 Sharks and relying heavily on Sharks, right? So I play 4 Hades. I just Hades every Shark, and if they have no Sharks left, like how can they play the game?
Right. That's always been the answer to that deck, is if you can just answer their Sharks and manners, like they have no way to get to 20 lore otherwise.
Exactly. So that's how this list came into fruition. And yeah, just because those old cards that we're used to seeing, like Snake, Rabbit, they're just not as good as it used to be. Like, you're sure, it still draws you cards, but it doesn't do anything. Like, you play a Rabbit and a Snake with 6 ink, and then your opponent plays a Shark, and you're like, oh, what am I supposed to do, right?
Right.
Right? It's like, great, you drew 2 cards, but you didn't impact the board, right? And I'm sure you've noticed it too, since you've played from the start of Lorcana. Like with every set that passes, the meta gets faster and faster, and every deck needs to be applying more pressure every single turn. And we can't just like take turns off and do nothing.
Right, exactly. Yeah. I see you do
so
have...
basically I just cut a lot of the... Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I see you do have 4 of my favorite cards in here with Gaston. This is a card that I've always dreamed of playing 4 of, just because I love Grammatala. I love being able to search my deck and pick what I need, and then he's just got such a good body, and really he'd only fit in Ruby Sapphire and Blue Steel to an extent in the past, but he was only a 1 or a 2 of because he didn't really impact the board at all. And most of those decks were always playing from behind. And so the fact that this deck can just take the gas running and play this ahead and just kind of keep putting that pressure on, that's really dangerous because a 4/4 with 3 lore in this metagame is actually really difficult to answer, especially on turn 5.
Yeah. Outside of Zeus, because when I was building a deck, right, once we cut Rabbit Snake, because that was a typical turn 6 play, right, for purple decks with 6 ink,
Yeah.
we're like, well, we need something that draws that continues to apply pressure, right? Because that's what the game is. We need to apply pressure every turn. So there's actually 2 options you can play in this slot. You can play Tamatoa, Happy Toa. And Tamatoa is also very good because it's another 6 cost character that can apply pressure and light Gaston. The difference is that if you don't have popsicles in the discard because you only run 4 popsicles, sometimes it's just doing nothing on turn 6, and then your turn 6 gets very awkward, right? Because like I alluded to earlier, it's like usually for purple decks before, you would play Rabbit Snake on turn 6 to draw cards, right? That's like kind of the most ink efficient resource play that you have. But now you just drop like a 6 cost character that applies a lot of pressure immediately and draws a card. That's kind of why these options were in place. So quick pros and cons on both is that Gaston is very, very good on turn 6, and you can dig for what you need. And he quests for 3. Very hard to remove, like we talked about earlier. But it's very hard. But he's uninkable, right, for 1. And as the game goes on, he gets a little bit worse. Whereas Tamatoa, it's a little bit worse exactly on turn 6 because likelihoods of having 1 or even 2 popsicles in discard is not that high. But the later the game goes on, Tamatoa gets better because he just becomes a very crazy draw engine where he just keeps going, and it's really hard to stop once the ball gets rolling, right?
Right.
So that's like kind of the pros and cons of Tamatoa and Gaston. Oh, and I forgot to mention Tamatoa only quests for 2. So sometimes it's a lot harder to force to be prepared with Tamatoa, especially if your opponent, it's open deck list, your opponent knows that you don't play Lucky Dime. The only
Right.
item you have is Popsicle. They're like, it's really not that scary. They can let it quest, right?
Right.
Then your game plan of forcing be prepared and then dropping McDuck Manners after is a little bit more sketchy, right? So they're both very good cards. I love both of them in that 6 slot. I don't think you can go wrong with either one. It just kind of depends on your play style.
Yeah. I do have one question on Bell. So typically, when I've played it in Ruby Sapphire or when I've played it in Blue Steel, I've not really liked playing Bell after turn 1 or turn 2. But with this deck having Finders Keepers in a 4 of and Friends in a 4 of, I feel like you could easily be Finders into like a Bell and a Pop, play it out, and then just continue to just reload the board on that. Is that something you're kind of doing a lot more and playing Bell and Pop a lot more after those first 2 turns?
Yeah, exactly. So with how the meta developed, like we talked about earlier, with DKP, red, blue, red, purple evasives, green discard decks, it made like our 1-drops a lot worse. Like all the Amethyst 1-drops is just not as good as they used to be. And then the other thing I noticed in the meta was that without a true control deck in the meta, like how Sisu on Ice was, Sailor's List, that kind of removed a lot of aggro decks in the meta where decks are trying to go under you. Now every deck is kind of like mid-rangey, I find. So there really isn't a need for 1-drops because you just play them, it kind of sits there and it's frozen. Because, for example, if you play the purple Diablo, you play it to the board, they have a shark on the board, they have all this stuff, it's just that you can't quest. It just sits there, right? Or if you play like Chernobog or Broom, you can play it, but all these decks are playing Let the Storm Rage on turn 1, they play Diablo turn 2, right? They shift Diablo, you can't even draw off Chernobog because you're just going to give them an extra card draw. Right. So that kind of shift in the meta allowed for Popsicle Bell to actually be, well, sorry, let me rephrase that. So because we don't need to play 1-drops, that gave us more flexibility in terms of what we can play. And Popsicle Bell allows Blurple like a couple things. Number 1, we actually have a high roll line that we can take, which is turn 1 Pop Bell, turn 2 Sing Friends, right?
Yeah, that is
it's about 30% that you can open it. It is disgusting. It's like an auto win once it happens, and it happens more often than you think. It's about 30% to open the 3 cards together.
Yeah, it's basically.
So it's really not that low.
Yeah, it's basically the same as opening with a Shift Diablo, right? But a lot less
Ish,
downside.
a little bit lower. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
But there's like no downside
Yeah.
because exactly. So they're all inkable. So you just ink it. If you don't open pop bell together, you can just ink them because they're not doing anything, right? Especially the bell. And so that's like one of the reasons with the high roll ability, and it feels very good. And just putting out a 3/3 on turn 1 if you need to fight aggro is also very strong, in case we do run into aggro, right?
Right.
And like you said, the draw cards. So Blurple is a pure tempo deck, right? There is no board wipes. So any card that allows us to gain tempo for free or play things for free is very welcome, because you can just Finders Keepers, right? And then you can draw into a bell and play a bell for free before you play Finders Keepers, and then you just pass. And it just kind of feels bad sometimes, especially if you're behind. Well, you don't do that when you're behind, but even if you're ahead, you can keep pushing your advantage now because you can just play the bell for free, right off the draw cards. Or you could just like flood the board. For example, like so many times it's happened where someone wheels me into like 3 bells, and then I have 3 popsicles on the board, and I just chuck them all out. And it's just like, thanks, right? So it's like very easy for it's very good for Blurple to at least stay even on tempo, because now we can play free things.
Right. And I think the only card we haven't discussed is this Bell Accomplished Mystic. Now, have you ever gotten the dream and just shifted the bell on top of your other bell after it's attacked, and then moved those counters over and just swung the game on like turn 3 or something?
Very rarely. This only would happen against like an aggro deck. So for example, maybe if someone quests it with like a piglet, right, and then they played another piglet, then yeah, I can do that. But the bigger reason that Bell is here in the deck is the card above it, which is Iago, which I don't think that anyone would have expected this in set 7, that this card is meta defining. But this card is quite the meta defining card, because it's very hard to get rid of. It's 4/6. It freezes the board. So that kind of this also allows Blurple to not play 1-drops, because you can just play Iago on turn 3 and it just slaughters everything, right? It can fight. It doesn't die to anything. It's evasive. And then after Iago swings into something, then you can Bell off Iago, because Iago holds damage very well for Bell with the 6 health. Right. So that makes it better. And you just look at Bell as like extra copies of Elsa, the 5-cost Elsa. Like it really does the same thing, right? We're just we're trying to break parity, just removing ready characters, things of that nature. Just like more tempo swing cards.
Right. And so what do you say is the best and worst matchups for this deck?
The best I would say is anything that's red.
Right, you did mention that.
The red decks is what I would prefer to. Yeah. Red decks is what I would prefer to play into. I think that's the easiest matchup for this deck historically. Always red decks. And the worst one is Amber Steel, because just like before, Blurple has a very hard time dealing with wide boards.
Right. And then once they get their singers established, you're just kind of on the back burner, never able to gain any footing, and then all of your card advantages goes away from the wheel. So, yep, that makes a lot of sense.
Aggro's hard too, though, because we don't play 1-drops, right? So, like, if say, someone's local field is more like aggro leading Amber Steel kind of thing, you would just cut the Bell Pop package and then play more 1-drops.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then before we get into the simulations, I'll just point out one more thing, that this is one of the cheapest decks I have ever seen. It looks like your only expensive card here is Hades and Genie. And so other than that, everything is just really, really cheap. So if you're on a budget, this is a pretty good deck for you.
I mean, you can ball out and play Swamp Gaston for Toa.
Yeah, if you want to make it pricier, for sure. All right, let's get into some hand altering simulations. We shall start as we
Sounds
always
good.
do, blind on the play.
Blind on the play. Okay. Here I'm not keeping goat. I'm not keeping Elsa. I'm not keeping Manor. So this is where I've always tossed and turned between, uh, especially with other people. So some people will tell you you should keep, you know, 2/3 of your broken opener. And some other people will say, well, you don't have anything guaranteed yet, right? Like there's
Hmm.
no 4-drop. Well, not well, go to 4, but I want Genie or Iago, right?
Right.
So they're like, you should ship it away. Because the way I look at the Bell Popsicle Friends line is kind of like Amber Steel's Shift Wheel line, right?
Hmm.
Like it's 3 cards. So normally what I would do is I would ship the Bell and Friends as well. Because I like to mulligan a little bit more conservatively most of the time. I'm keeping one of the bells.
Got it.
So it's like if I do draw into the popsicle, I can play popsicle bell. If I don't draw into it, bell's my first ink.
Right.
So that's how I like to mulligan. Just do it a little bit. I like to just do it a little bit safer. Some people will just shift everything except for sale.
Right. Gotcha.
Yeah.
I think that makes a lot of sense. I probably would have been the greedy one, keeping the friends and the bell and the sale and sending everything else back.
Hey, like this happened a lot of times to me. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
I was gonna say like if you kept the friends, you would have had it, right? Um, and yeah, you can greed and get it, but sometimes on the flip side, it's like if you greed and you don't get anything back, then your whole hand is just a dud, right?
Right. Exactly. But we are liking
Yeah.
this
But this
hand.
hand is very good,
Right. Right. Right.
right? You have popsicle turn 1. You don't have to play the bell. I think that's a trap that a lot of people fall into, that they just force the bell even though you don't need to play the bell. If it's not an aggro deck, you don't need to play it. If you don't have friends, you don't have to play the bell.
Mm-hmm. Right. And
Yeah.
we're kind of lacking on draw here. So, as you said, we could just
Mm-hmm.
gas out if we don't run into something. I mean, we have a lot of draws with Popsicle and Sail to get there, but as it stands right
Mm-hmm.
now, when we don't know what we're playing against, it might be best just to hold off on that bell for one turn.
Yeah. And the other thing is like, we run 8 uninkables that are above 6 costs with Gaston and Hades. So if you draw into them, they really brick you in
Right.
the early game, and you really don't want to be bricked in the early game.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Unlike a genie or a rabbit, right? They are your 4 cost. You can play it on turn 3, draw a card, you'll be fine.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Let's do
No, solid hand.
yeah on the play blind, or sorry, on the draw blind. On the draw blind.
On the draw blind, I would ship the Hades, both of them, and the genie.
Yeah, we
And
got
that's
it.
about it.
We're
Because
keeping
now,
one Tipo for ink. We've got our other Tipo, and then go straight into Iago, and we feel really good on that.
yep, this is good. Like we
I
have enough ink to play.
yeah, I love opening triple Tipo because that means I will not be drawing them later.
I hate drawing this card.
Yeah, yeah. Tipo's the
Oh,
best card in the opener, and just I never want to see him again after that.
exactly. Exactly.
All right, let's go against the DKP Ruby Sapphire deck on the play.
Okay. So here I am shipping everything, but I'm literally just shipping everything here.
Yeah, because this is one. If you miss
Yeah.
Popsicle,
Like,
you're just done.
well, no. Well, the other thing is like Bell turn 1 with friends is good against the DKP list. Bell turn 1 without Popsicle does absolutely nothing.
Right.
So there's no point. Just ship it. And
Uh,
again, if we did keep Bell Pop, we could have had, the opener potentially.
Potentially, but we have a
Yeah.
nice safe hand here. I'd like to see us get a better 4-drop in the draws we have, but this is definitely
Mm-hmm.
serviceable. We'd
Yep.
likely try and want to avoid inking these Hades to keep for shark answers, but we might have to ink one with Tipo depending.
Yeah, depending what the next draws are. So like draw popsicle, draw for turn. Then that will determine if I would sail or TPO here.
Right.
Ideally, it would be sail, not TPO. So we'll see. And the other thing is like we play 12 4 drops, right? Like character 4 drops and 3 manners, so it's technically 15. Um, so like the odds of drawing into another 4 is relatively high. So I'm like really comfortable shipping my 4s away if I don't
Right.
have ramp, especially in the opening 7. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. All right, let's do on the draw versus the same DKP list.
Yeah, on the draw doesn't really change too much. It used to matter more, but it really doesn't now. I'm keeping sail,
Yeah, this is a
and
pretty.
I'll probably keep Genie, and that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because they're not on brawls anymore, that's why I'm willing to keep Genie now on the draw against the red decks, just
Yeah, it
for that
theoretically
reason alone.
should quest twice pretty easily.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like 4 free lore, at least 2, if anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and now we have a shark answer, so pretty good.
Yep.
All
Good.
right, let's go against.
I'll also keep the crab here, actually,
Oh yeah.
in this hand as well. Some people might ink it early, but it's like you play Genie, it checks the shark, right? They can't quest.
Right. Oh yeah, true. A lot of people, I bet, would miss that one.
Yeah.
Let's
Exactly.
go Ruby Amethyst Evasives. That's been popular in the last week or so.
So in this matchup, the most important thing is actually finding Iago on turn 3.
Yeah.
So what I would do here is ship the Elsa, the Belle, and the 2 goats away. I'm not going to ship Genie because in the event that I don't find Iago, I still need something to play.
Right. And Genie's always a good play.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And we got our Iago, and we're feeling great.
That is very good. Finders too, very good. So for example, in this hand, oftentimes you can just go Popsicle turn 1, Tipo turn 2, Iago turn 3, and Finders turn 4, and just pass because Iago just freezes everything, right? So
Right.
it's a lot easier to actually Finders and pass. And the odds are that Finders will probably find you a Bell by that time, by turn 6.
And then you just
For that
regain that
popsicle
tempo that
earlier.
you'd lost from the Finders. So,
Mhm.
awesome.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Let's go on the draw versus Ruby Amethyst Evasives.
Same thing. I am looking for Iago, and this hand I would probably ship everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you might have noticed that a lot of the times with this deck, I'm just sending everything away, keeping 1, maybe 2 cards. Oh, this hand is absolutely brutal. I
Oh,
think
this
you're
is
dead.
I think this is a tough one with having 12 unankables, and we also altered a few unankables too. So this is just one of those.
Yeah.
This is just one of those you get like one in a DLC, and you're just like, why?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like even if Gaston was happy, it's like it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like you don't have your
You don't
2
have
costs.
ramp.
Like
You're
you're
just
just
doing
like dead
nothing.
hand.
Yeah. You just pass. the
Well,
first
for all you know,
turns.
you might draw Tipo next turn, and then you're fine.
Yeah. True.
Right? Tipo next turn fixes this entire hand. So,
Right. All right.
but yeah, this is terrible.
Let's go into Emerald Amethyst on the play.
I'm keeping only Iago and sending everything else back. So against the evasive purple decks, I'm always just keeping Iago blind. If I know what it, oh, sorry, not blind. If I know it's a purple deck, I'm always keeping Iago regardless of ramp because of how important this card is in the matchup. Not Bell though, or Manor. Yeah. There you go. We can play the game.
Excellent. Yeah. We got exactly what you want. We got the Iago into Elsa on 3 and 4, and then or follow it up with the Finders Keepers, and
Yeah,
pretty good.
that's another thing we actually didn't talk about with the Finders Keepers. So against these green decks, because they're all discarding you, right? Finders just is able to refill your hand, so they can never truly discard everything.
Right. And there's such a slow deck.
And obviously, it's not as long. Yeah, exactly. It's slow.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can literally take a whole turn off and draw 3 cards and pass, and they quest for like 2. And you're like, yeah, whatever.
All right, let's go to Emerald, Amethyst on the draw.
Hmm. On the draw, I'm probably sending everything.
Except Tipo,
Uh,
right? Or are you sending
except
Tipo?
Tipo, yeah, for
Okay.
sure. Yeah, yeah. We're a real blue deck now. We're just keeping ramp.
Yeah, exactly. This is how I've altered my hands for quite a long time now.
Yeah. We're no longer a purple deck. We are a blue deck right now.
Right.
A blue deck with purple cards.
All right, let's see what we got. Uh,
That's not bad.
the triple Tipo, I love it. We just would like to have a better 4-drop.
Iago Genie.
Yeah,
Yep.
just to get
Yep.
some hand refill against these decks.
Yep. Well, this matchup, Emerald Amethyst, is just, if you open Iago, is literally like you can just see your opponent's soul leaving their body because of how bad it feels. Like, because they literally can't do anything to a turn 3 Iago.
Right.
Yeah, which is why we're mulliganing so hard for Iago.
Okay, let's go into our
Yeah.
final one of the day, Steel Song, on the play and on the draw. We'll start with on the play.
And this is the absolute worst matchup in
Right.
the history of matchups.
Yeah, so we gotta
But here
cover
I'm
it.
shipping Iago.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
are shipping Iagos and Elsa here. I'm keeping Bell because I really want that Bell pop.
Right.
Right?
We're already
Like, very
unfavored,
important in this matchup.
so we gotta
Mhm.
rely on some better plays here.
Yep. Yep.
Now, are you
I'll do that.
keeping both Tipos, or are you gonna send one back?
Yes. I'm keeping both.
Got it. And Fox?
I'm keeping it because before, what purple used to be able to do is after you ramp on turn 2, you can play a 1-drop, play Fox, bounce the 1-drop, attack the Singer, right? We can't really do that anymore because we don't have a 1-drop. So the only thing we can do is on 5 ink, you Tipo and Fox.
Right.
So what I've been doing often is sail on turn 2 into a 4-drop of whatever, and then I will Tipo Fox on turn 5, and then that puts me to 6, and then next turn I can Hades
Yep. And
right
then,
away.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so you're actually fighting
And
for
then I
board.
can Elsa Crab, Elsa Fox, whatever at 8 ink after that.
Yeah, and then that makes them not as likely to want to whole new world you because your hand has been pretty depleted.
Yeah.
All right. And there's the Hades you spoke of.
Yeah. You just gotta, like, it feels bad. And it's the one matchup that I really don't want to see with this deck, and we are quite unfavored into it. But there's not much you can do.
Right.
Like, you are so good into every other matchup in the meta, you have to have something bad.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
And for our final one of the day, Steel Song on the draw.
Okay. We have Bell Pop. So I am keeping our auto win opener of Bell Pop Friends and setting the rest here. Because
Easy
I really
enough.
need 2-cost ramp.
And we hit it.
That is quite good.
Yep. Imagine if we hit another popsicle. And then.
Oh, we're not losing then against Steel Song.
Yeah, because then we'll have our 2 bells out. We'll just be drawing a ton of cards. That'll be so nice.
Yep. 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 Yep.
All right. Well.
Yeah. So. Very go ahead.
Yep. No. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, like, I think this last altar was the only one that we opened Bell Pop Friends, but all the other games where we could have kept Bell, you also could have had the popsicle. If we wanted to greed, we would have had the 30% chance of opening all 3 together, right? But yeah, oftentimes, like we said, it's not worth it to greed because it's much better to have a playable hand than an unplayable hand.
Right, and I think you touched on it well too, where we went for it here because the matchup is already unfavorable, so we need to take some of those extra points
Mm-hmm.
or try and gain some of those extra points back to try and win these unfavorable matchups. So we have to be a little greedier.
Yeah. Another thing that people don't realize often when they play Blurple against the red decks that we're talking about is that your draw cards are technically uninkable, right? Like if this was old school red blue, right? You would not ink Hiram into a red deck.
Right.
You just don't do that, right? Like your friends, your FKs, they're basically your Hirams. You cannot ink them. So if you keep Bell friends in your opener and you draw into uninkables or don't have ramp or whatever, your hand just does not look good after post altar, then what are you gonna do? You're gonna ink your friends, right? That's how you auto lose the matchup.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, this has been a really, really exciting show. Once again, thank you for being our first repeat guest. Is there anything else you'd like to say or shout out before we close this episode down today?
I would just like to thank you again for inviting me and having me back for another episode of this. Really appreciate it. And shout out to our friends over at SLTC who've been helping me refine this deck further. And also shout out to my community, Flower Farm, for also helping me test and refine this deck further. Because without the help of these people, I wouldn't have been able to come to the conclusion with this deck this quickly in a span of less than a week.
Right, yeah. I have seen so many people just playing this deck in SLTC, and it's been most of my week actually just watching people play this. I haven't played a game on it by myself, but I feel like I have just watching a lot of Attack for 2 in there. So thanks again, and this episode is sponsored by World Class Cards. Please go and look at their Metafy to join their Founders Club. There's only a few spots left. You get a very special famous card for joining, along with a bunch of other perks. So once again, that's World Class Cards. Check out their Metafy. And don't forget to check out JDRR's Metafy. He is one of the only free content creators out there and sends some amazing guides, especially on Blurple. So go check him out. And once again, see you all next week, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
All right.